Hello, good afternoon or good morning, whatever time you're viewing this in. Hi, my name is Paul. This is our group. We have Madeline and Caitlin here with us today. We're going to be tackling various different aspects of the Mparntwe Declaration and their goals. The main goal that I'll be focusing on today is enhancing student learning in middle years. We've got Madeline over here tackling.
I'll be doing supporting all young Australians at risk of educational disadvantage.
And last but not least, we have Caitlin tackling.
I'll be doing embedding pathways for learning throughout life and supporting effective transition.
Awesome. Let's start us off with Madeline. What have you got?
Awesome. So, throughout my presentation today, I will be focusing on supporting all young Australians at risk of educational disadvantage. Many students face disadvantage in their education. As the Mparntwe Declaration states, this can be those from low socioeconomic backgrounds, those from regional, rural and remote areas, migrants and refugees, learners in out-of-home care, homeless young people and children with disability, as well as those that missed the start of their education and those that came into education developmentally vulnerable. As one of the goals of the Mparntwe Declaration has a particular focus on promoting equity, therefore, this particular call to action becomes very important in education and one that needs to be continually looked at and evolving in order to ensure that all students are supported in their education. This type of action needs to happen from the top down. Leaders in education need to be the ones that enact this support and ensure that they become a role model for all teachers as well as students. Bradley, Drucker, Green and Leaves state in their piece that educational disadvantage starts from a young age and is not only determined by the school they attend, but by their family situation, as well as the other factors stated above. They also state that those such as Indigenous Australians and others that may live in rural or remote areas can often be disadvantaged as their school may not be as well funded. Therefore, resources that may be necessary to support disadvantaged students may not be there to do this successfully. The National Reform Agreement does aim to combat this and support those that are educationally disadvantaged. This is particularly prevalent in the first few reforms stated, such as providing teachers with online learning assessment tools which can be tailored to the individual learning needs of each student, as well as reviewing senior secondary pathways into work, further education and training. This last one is of the utmost importance when it comes to supporting disadvantaged students. As Bland states in their piece, that often those that are disadvantaged are underrepresented in tertiary education and may often not even finish school. Therefore, the leaders within a school need to be supportive of these students. And as Bland says in their piece, one of the ways to combat and support those that are disadvantaged is to bring them into the discussion. Let them use their voice and help make the decisions. They are the ones that know best about the ways they would like to be supported in their education. This is not something I've seen before, but it is something that I believe to be extremely important, and therefore one that I think all school leaders and politicians should take into consideration when coming up with policies and documents such as the National Reform. There is much work that needs to be done in order to fully support all young Australians at risk of educational development. One of the key factors in achieving a full level of support is funding that schools receive. As Vickers states in their piece, that in Australia, funding between schools and particularly between private and public schools shows a major disparity in funding and therefore means that schools are becoming segregated and unequal. One of the schools that I completed placement at had many students that needed support in English. And as the classes were quite large, this often meant that an aide was needed in order to support these students fully, as a teacher would not be able to spend the amount of time with these students in order for them to receive the appropriate amount of support. However, as the school was quite underfunded, this often meant that the aides and teachers were in high demand, often meaning that these students went without help and would struggle to complete work in the class. A way to combat this is through those in leadership positions, particularly politicians that are able to supply funding. Therefore, through teamwork between school leaders, politicians, teachers, and students, these gaps in education can be filled and all students can have the opportunity to succeed in their education with full support from all involved. Over to you, Caitlin.
Awesome. So thanks, Maddie. So again, my commitment is embedding pathways for learning throughout life and supporting effective transitions. So both the Melbourne Declaration and the Mparntwe Education Declaration discuss the importance of this specific commitment and its place among the interrelated zones for action and improvement. The declarations need the declarations discuss the need to build 21st century learners, ones who understand the skill sets required to engage in society and contribute to the best of their ability. This incorporates experiences over a learning trajectory, one that understands the consistency for growth as well as the opportunities for said growth. Education must act as the foundation for these learning pathways, offering educational experiences that link theory to practice, which help build lifelong learners who strive for measure of continual knowledge and move beyond the realm of the high school classroom. So one area of education where we can observe this commitment is the Australian curriculum itself. So as fundamental as it is, it provides the framework for student growth and learning and advocates the need for life learning. So an area where it does this is striving for students to develop the capabilities, such as critical thinking, creative thinking, etc. The learning of these capabilities is done so over the curriculum's recognition of learning progression, where student growth and achievement is guided over a period of time, whilst adhering to the academic requirements for education. So the capabilities are interacted with throughout programs by teaching staff designed to empower students with the knowledge and opportunities to develop student voice and agency, which enables leaders to lead their own learning and further develop life skills. So working closely alongside the curriculum is at the National School Reform Agreement of 2019, where governments put together goals and frameworks to optimise student outcomes and promote the first outcome goal of excellence and equity in education environments. The third goal or policy initiative on this reform aims to review secondary pathways into the workforce, looking closely at the abilities of students and how best to ensure that they can navigate experiences beyond schooling. So the subsequent report, Looking to the Future, was released in June of this year and found that strengthening learning pathways between school and industry was key to student progression, whilst also prioritising diversity in learning, equity and opportunity, and holistic approaches to student development and knowledge. The report demonstrates success throughout younger years of schooling, with adolescent pathways consistently built and reflected upon for improvement. And however, for more senior students, it proves more challenging as industry partnerships are not as embedded within education as needed, and there is a domination of the ATAR success, hindering alternative pathways and flexibilities. To support this and ensure the overarching commitment achieves educational outcome goals, continued progress into flexible pathways is encouraged, and the continuation of dismantling the one-size-fits-all traditional approach to learning. So the framework for improving student outcomes, or FISO, is observed to how we can improve schools and make it effective for students, placing importance of the journey of learning to strengthen educational excellence. The improvement cycle is constructed by reliable measures, which use student data to analyse the achievements to an external standard. And the framework upholds the educational outcome for excellence and equity, as schools can use the given data to evaluate what aspects of learning pathways students are falling short of, which in turn identifies targets of improvement. So a barrier to such frameworks is the enormity of its implementation. It takes time to apply appropriate research, and school leaders must have long-term perspectives, as well as rapport and inclusion with the entire school community to enable movement in a agreed upon direction. So a specific example is from Assumption College with their Mind Map learning program. Post-school outcomes are prioritised with connected learning pathways that allow students to contextualise their trajectories and find relevance in school-based learning. So this ultimately works to strengthen the foundations for lifelong learners and bridge the gap between school and work, whilst also allowing students the opportunities for self-directed learning, of which welcomes the ideas of modifications and even failure, as these are aspects of life that students will encounter and must develop problem-solving skills to work with their experiences. So a challenge for school leaders to implement such pathways is to ensure that there is sufficient amount of research-based evidence for the pathways themselves, and this is to ensure that educational leaders keep to programs that do have clear learning trajectories with options and reliable open avenues for choice. So implementing pathways such as these is crucial to developing 21st century learners, ones who continue to seek knowledge as independent, active members of society. There is an inevitable barrier here, however, one that is discussed throughout the programs of learning pathways for Australian students. That is the matter of globalisation, with the emphasis on building global learners. We have to acknowledge the consistently changing state of education as it progresses quickly alongside technology. Learning for students will always remain subject to such technological change, and this in turn accentuates the requirement for such learning plans and transitions to remain flexible. And on to you, Paul.
Awesome, thank you very much, Caitlin. Now, talking about the Pathway Declaration and its successor, the Melbourne Declaration, they address key areas in which to improve student learning and engagement, one of them being the goal to enhance middle years of development in education. The middle years are typically the trickiest areas to tackle with low rates of student engagement, more than any of the previous years, with any radical changes running the risk of further disengaging those students and reducing their chances at educational success. Dr. David Smith addresses in one of his reports analyzing needs of adolescents and what really needs to be addressed when it comes to like stimulating them in education. These needs primarily include intellectual needs. So we've got intellectually stimulating tasks. We've got physical needs, an outlet for them to exert themselves physically, social and emotional needs, promoting self-efficacy, self-esteem, etc. We've got the moral needs as well, which you are exploring a range of value systems, which in turn allow them to develop their own set of morals. So few of these needs are actually addressed very vaguely in the National School Reform Agreement of 2019, with reforms 1 and 2 primarily focused around creating learning progressions and resources that should adhere to the student's intellectual needs. Prioritizing differentiated learning to allow the student to be able to be intellectually stimulated and develop skills at their own understanding, with the remainder of the needs having been addressed since the National School on Reporting in Australia from 2011, with clear focuses on providing stimulating and relevant experiences, excursions, and school community links for middle year students, and supporting school leaders and middle years teachers to provide learning and teaching programs that encourage and motivate all students through innovative, integrated multimodal approaches, which is something that is primarily essential to have students develop independence and various essential skills pertaining to their development as scholars and members of society. One of the many approaches that can be seen at a school level is primarily at the school where I did placements in, where they already had implemented a designated day once every 2 weeks, in which students are exposed to real world situations and they collaborate with other students. They learn various life skills and develop their morality / essential skills. Examples of this could be vacation planning, city experience, camps, community projects, etc. In these days, students would complete real-world tasks or projects and report on them. This approach was then extended to the regular classroom, in terms of adapting real-world tasks and applying them to assessment. For example, in the field of ICT, they would have students complete a project or a website for a client, with regular meetings with the client for a more immersive experience. Theoretically, these approaches are effective in achieving the educational goals. With their roots primarily in project-based learning, students are exposed to finding multiple solutions through questioning, debating ideas, making predictions, collecting data, communicating ideas / findings to others, and creating artifacts. This does develop their literacy and numeracy skills, enhance their critical thinking and communication skills, which in turn makes them lifelong learners. Should the student complete this project successfully, they would also have the skills to be confident and creative individuals. But that said, Blumfield and company did address a vital concern. In order for this project to be successful, or this implementation to be successful and achieve the positives mentioned prior, a lot of effort / time, consideration and efficient support of teacher and student is essential towards making this approach a success, leading to one of the major barriers of this policy implementation. Teachers are constantly required to be able to upskill and have flexibility in transitioning to new methods. With this requirement, a good number of teachers have been reported to be unprepared to factor this into their planning, with reports from Walsh and Black having interviewed certain schools, and some principals reporting that 50% of their teachers have been struggling with upskilling and transitions to new methods. In this instance, it was the transition to student-centered learning. This then bleeds into the planning, rendering it ineffective and also resulting in student disengagement. A potential solution to this could be to allocate further time to teachers in order for them to learn and adapt to the changing class structures. This does require education and school leaders to allow further resources to be implemented to allow for teacher development to be successful, as well as reduce the strain for teachers, on teachers, in order for them to be able to adapt and to the new changing environment. Yes, so that's pretty much the long and short of our presentation. Thank you very much for watching. And here's our reference list, pretty much long and short of it. And Thank you very much. Have a good day.